Welcome to Life Change Transformation. We're season 2, episode 12. Today, we're going to talk about the five love languages. It's written by Gary Chapman. It's a book. It had a big impact in my life. As always, I'm here with Maeve Langford from Cork, Ireland. She's a transformational life coach. She has an amazing following. She does great work over there. And I'm so happy to always be here and have her insights and to share and collaborate in this way with her because really, truly, she is amazing at what she does. And I just love all the stuff she has to bring and the value she brings to this podcast and to her clientele and to her people. That's pretty cool. My name is Gary
Absolutely.
Benoit. I've been retired police officer now for a year or so. I spent 25 years doing that career. I'm an author of a book called A Call for Service. I'm licensed in the financial services industry, and I do a bunch of speaking and educating around how to live a life a little bit better, a little more fuller, and how you bring your awareness to that. So it's fantastic to be here with you guys as always. This is the month of love. It's February. We're coming to the end of February. Of course, we're coming to rolling into the spring here. Hopefully soon in Canada, maybe in Ireland. You're already there. I'm not sure.
We're kind of in it,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's fantastic. But really, the five love language book itself had a huge impact on me personally. And I think the reason why we're bringing it up to have a conversation about this and just to show people is that, you can find your inspirations from anywhere. It doesn't really matter where it's at. And ultimately, if you haven't read this book, I would recommend it just because it gives you some deeper understanding of your partner and everything else.
Sure.
So if you'll indulge me a little bit, I'm just going to go into a bit of a personal story. I'm going to tell you a bit about my history. And like I said, I was a police officer 25 years. I joined policing when I was 20 years old. I was married and divorced very early on in my career to a lady. And then shortly, about a short time out, a year or so after I got divorced, I was with my new wife, who's Colette, and she's an amazing lady. And we were together, and we weren't married yet. We got pregnant. We had little a little baby boy who's an amazing 18-year-old man now, which is kind of crazy to say. And my career was one where, in policing as anything else, it's incident after incident of things that you see that you bring with you. And ultimately, all those moments that I had gone through um, had really compounded until in 2007, I had a major incident where some things happened it really shook me because it got me thinking about all of the what ifs that could have happened, all the what ifs that could have happened with all the other ones. It's like like I say, someone took a box in my brain to move it for more space and the whole bottom fell out and I just had this flooding of information. And what it did, the result of that, unable to process in my own mind, caused me to show up in my relationship in a very different way. I was working overtime all the time. That's the only time I really felt alive was when I was at work. Um, when I was at home, I was there in body, but I was not there at all in mind or spirit. Like I was somewhere else all the time. Essentially, Colette, my wife, she was looking after our little son, but she was also parenting me because I wasn't capable of even being there for her. We weren't communicating. We weren't. Um, we were falling apart. Essentially, we were falling apart because I just wasn't. I didn't have the capacity. And I didn't see what was happening, and I was drinking a lot, and I was doing partying, and I was doing all this stuff. And really, truthfully, I'm really truly amazed when I look back at it. I'm like, man, I'm surprised she stuck around for as long as she did because I don't know if anybody else would have. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for her sticking around. But she came to me in a moment, and because we were at the point of divorce, essentially, like she came and said, I can't live like this anymore, and it's up to you to make a decision. And she was like secure in it herself. So she had made the decision that she was going to live life differently and regardless if I was going to come along or not. And in that moment of and we've had this, and we had this conversation a few times before. This wasn't the first time she said I can't live like this. This is probably like the fourth or fifth time she came to me as a kid. I said I'm done. Right? I mean, because she comes to you the first time and you improve for a day or two, and things are okay, and then it falls off, and then that's kind of was my pattern, right? It was a couple days, maybe 3 days a week, 2 weeks, and I'd fall off, right? And so it was like you're trying to start an engine that didn't have the gas to go, like it was sputtering. I was kind of what it was
Mm.
like until this last conversation. She's like, "That's it," because she had decided for herself. I think before I don't think she had 100% decided, and so there's a bit of like wiggle room there for me. And when she decided for herself, I could see something different in her eyes that day, right? And so I decided in that moment to do something different. I could have followed the road and I could have been on that path of destruction. I knew where I could see the end of the road. It was close, like it was within weeks, right? Within weeks, probably days. And in that moment, I decided for my family, I decided for something different. But the problem with that decision was I didn't know how to, I had no idea what that step was. And so when I made the decision, there's a lot of emotion there at the time, and in the tears and the crying and all this stuff was going on. I said, "Look, I'm here for you. What do I got to do? What do you want me to do?" Because I don't know what to do. Surrendered, and she literally tossed me this book. This is the book I read. This is it right here, and she literally threw it across the kitchen at me, and it landed in my lap. And she's like, "You got to read this first," because she'd been on a bit of a self discovery as well, and so you know. Because ultimately what I was doing is, and there's a story that I think I talk about it a couple times, a few episodes ago, maybe even last season, about tulips. I bought Colette tulips this one time because I was obviously I did something probably that didn't make her happy, and I was trying to probably smooth it over a little bit and try to do the typical guy thing and buy some flowers and say I'm sorry, and it's going to be all different, like 'cause that happens sometimes. And because I didn't have the ability to see what I was doing. And I bought tulips. And when I gave her the tulips, I think initially she was flattered that there was flowers, but when she opened the bag of unwrapped the paper and come these flowers, she burst into tears because she hates tulips in that moment. She didn't love tulips. Tulips were her most hated flower in the entire world, and all that signified was that I wasn't listening to her.
Yeah.
Right.
And we probably all have a version of that, right?
Right.
In our experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when she tossed me this book, I had to decide to read it or not. Right. And so I don't, at the time, I didn't read books. That wasn't something I did. And I'm like, well, I'll read this book. I have no idea what it's about, but I'm going to read it. And it honestly saved my marriage. If it wasn't for me reading this book, and I leaned into like, I just was 100% in. I was 100, it was 100% decided I was going to do something different for my family. And so it truly, honestly, like saved my marriage. If I didn't read this, I know I wouldn't be married right now to her. And all I did was I showed up differently for her after I realized what she needed. I think that's the greatest thing is that we get to show up for other people, right? For what they need. Because oftentimes we show up as how we think we would show up, right? So I believe that acts of love and stuff was like gifts, things, because
Yeah.
that's was something that I learned when I was younger. But in that moment, call that was an act of service person. I needed to show up and take the garbage out and
Yeah.
spend time with Aiden and take the weight of all of the stuff that she was dealing with on a day-to-day basis off of her because she was dealing with everything at the home, everything,
Yeah.
right?
So I think, Gary, maybe this is a point where we tell people what the five love languages
Yeah,
are, because you talk about, Colette needed acts of service, which is helping with the chores, sharing responsibility, all of that. And you were showing up with the gifts and the gestures.
correct,
So there was love there, right? There was love there, but she couldn't see it because it wasn't how she receives it.
correct. Like
And you didn't know what you were doing wrong because you thought giving gifts was the way to show love.
100%.
And what I love about Chapman's work is that like there's no right or wrong, right? It's just
No.
we kind of have different ways of feeling it, probably related to how we grew up and what we observed around us. But the five, I'm just going to read them off.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening today, I'm just acknowledging I haven't read the book, right? Gary has referenced it a few times here on the podcast, and I said to him, let's just explain it a bit better because I know what the five are, but as I said, I don't know the detail of it. But there's words of affection, so kind words, encouragement, praise, compliments, quality time, family time, together time, creating memories, acts of service where you're helping out and in practical ways,
Yeah.
receiving gifts that are thoughtful and meaningful, I suppose, and physical touch, holding hands, hugs, kisses, public displays of affection, and sexual intimacy.
Mhm.
So, and again, that would be appropriate to, so the five love languages can apply beyond a husband and wife partnership. But so the physical touch piece, I suppose, for all of us to remember that that's appropriate to the relationship.
Mhm. And the thing is, you could be a blend, right? That's, as you don't,
Yeah.
you may not be, you may more maybe a combination of a couple that how you feel that way. So there's not like it's like set in stone where that's the way you are and that's what it is. And
Yes.
I think I think as you grow in a relationship, those things will change. For the most part,
Hmm.
you may see some change in your love language,
Sure.
right? Because as you grow and as you get fulfilled, there's a thing there. The things I leaned into, like when I realized that Colette was an acts of service, kind of that's what she needed, like because her love, he talks about a love cup. He talks about how full, how are you pouring into that cup for your partner, for that person, for your relationship? Are you pouring into that cup? Are you keeping it relatively full? What does that look like every day? And it made it easy for me. I had never done any personal development really until this book. So this book opened the door for my journey on personal development. So it changed my perspective on awareness. It changed my perspective on just me, how I am, right? How I was being, right? And
Hmm.
I didn't have the language or the ability to explain it back then, but ultimately now I understand that we talked about how do you show up for people. The last episode we talked about showing up for people and how do you show up every day for yourself and for others. Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly what this is what helped me do because it helped me understand this. And so that's what I leaned into. I just leaned into, okay, how do I like, I need to be there for her. I took a mindful step every day to that. And I asked for her help too. I said, look, I said, for that, at that time, my memory was absolutely horrendous when it came to stuff around the home. I could recite you all the laws and all the sections and all the things I needed to do at work. I could do that in my sleep. But when it came to remembering to pick up the garbage, I couldn't remember what day the garbage day was. I couldn't recall. So, and that was a part of my journey through the healing of the injury that I received mentally, or the occupational injury, and growing in that relationship. So I asked for her help. I said, "Hey, write me a list. Give me a list. If you can do that for me every week, I can take that list and I can keep it with me so I know what I'm doing. So I have create better habits." And I leaned in as much as I could every day. I didn't do it perfectly either. There was lots of days I didn't. It wasn't perfect, but like just taking the garbage out, just cleaning up the dishes, putting the dishes away, um, vacuuming the floor or wiping the table or, spending time with Aiden or whatever that looked like, taking time away, giving her time away from home, right? Just giving that opportunity. So I
Having a
leaned into that,
break. Yeah.
right? That break,
Yeah.
right? So that's what she needed. And, and, and really like those were so tangible to me. It made a lot of sense, right? I could actually put it into like, oh, these are the things, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, as we do that and as we lean into like because there's a bunch of them there. Like when I did mine, of course, you know, I think I was a bit of a blend, right, of personal touch, right, and
Hmm.
physical touch, sorry, and like the quality time. That was a big piece
Hmm.
of it. for me, because quality time and personal touch, two different things, right? Quality time is that time, whether it's watching a movie, whether it's going on a walk, whether it's, I don't know, we're playing
Cooking the
golf or
dinner.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And then I think, the rest of it didn't really resonate at all with me. Like I don't, I, I believe gifts were the way you showed love, but I didn't need to receive any gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting. So like ultimately your history, like when you think about you and your history, when you come where from Maeve's perspective, when you learned about love, what was that like when you learned about it? Right.
Yeah, I think some of it, I would have come from a very kind of huggy, touchy family. So I definitely, that capacity to just give someone a hug. And even with my own boys now, I see it like Andrew and I both would say, I love you to the kids, and
Hmm.
they'll say it back, love you too, mom. And I love that. I love that they can say it. And I think in our relationship, words of affirmation are very important. Encouraging praise, compliments. I think yeah, I think learning that and
Hmm.
not feeling, there was a time when I would have felt like, oh, I'm in an all male household, right? And I'm like, do I have to stroke egos all the time? And like we can get very judgy,
Yeah.
about some of this. And I was like, no, no, like why would I? As I say, I didn't read the whole book, but I got it in terms of these five different ways
Hmm.
of showing and expressing love and learning that if somebody else just wants to be acknowledged, right? And one of the ways that might be giving a gift, or it could be saying, good job, you, well done, and I
Correct.
appreciate that.
Right.
So really learning for me, that was a big thing in my house with all my men to be able to acknowledge and give those words of affirmation and not be judgy about it. Um, the quality time for me, that would personally be a piece in terms of, I don't need a lot of it, but I do need some.
Hmm.
Um, and the acts of service, so again, you were kind of saying how like we're all a bit different, and maybe I think that we probably all need a little bit of all of these things, but we
I
have
think so.
preferences.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Um, Mine would definitely, I would definitely identify with what you're saying your wife needed in terms of those acts of service, the help around the home. But I do know that sometimes you see in these descriptions, it's like looking after somebody when they're sick and bringing them a cup of soup or whatever. And I know me, if I'm sick, I don't want to see anybody. Do
Hmm.
not come near me. Like cup or soup or no soup, just leave me alone. I just
Hmm.
want because I grew up in a self-employed household, and when we were sick, you were like allowed to go to bed and be in
Yep.
bed, but like nobody came to see you, right? Everybody else was busy and running around in a 12-hour day, running a business. So for me, that's when I'm sick, I just love to be left alone and a bottle of Lucasade, like that as a child. That's what
Yep.
we would have had, a bottle of
Yep.
Lucasade to give you energy.
Nice.
And that's still what I would want, and just leave me alone. So like I think, in fairness to Chapman, who wrote the book, I think he did a wonderful service to collect these ideas and demonstrate how they can play out. And I think I just love, and I'm sorry that the book was thrown at you, Gary, but I love
No.
that Colette was able to say, read the freaking book, right? Because then by both of you having read it, you have language that now it's a shared language to be
Yeah.
able to understand and communicate around some of our unmet needs or what we'd like to be different. Does that make
100%.
sense?
Like, the thing is that
Yeah,
we didn't have the greatest communication then,
sure.
right? And I think because we spoke two different dialects
Yeah,
of English, essentially, right?
yeah,
She was speaking
yeah,
one way and I was speaking another way. And it did give us common ground.
yeah, yeah,
And what that did is it is funny, not funny, I guess. No, funny is the wrong word. I'm so curious about those things. When you make those decisions and you lean into something as simple as, okay, we know what the love languages are now. We each know each other's language essentially and how we're going to show up and the things we're going to do. How that then spirals into a whole new era of like better communication, understanding that we can talk and have conversations that are, challenging. And And it took us a while to get there because it took me, I had some repairs I had to do, right? For me personally, I know, and I know there was two, people would say it wasn't all me. And I get that. I know that she wasn't a total angel either. Like she'll admit that, like she wasn't the perfect housewife, as you want to say. She wasn't the perfect housewife. But I didn't have that expectation of her anyway. But the thing is that I wanted to take responsibility for me,
Yeah. How
right?
you're showing up,
How I
right?
showed her. I want to take responsibility for me. And so when
Yeah.
I do put a lot of like heat on myself in that moment because I'm like, no, this is as big a part of my problem as it is somebody else's problem. So how can I alleviate some of this stuff? And I'd seen a lot of people, my friends getting divorced and everything else. I'm like, I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to do that a second time. That wasn't fun the first time. I don't want to do it the second time. And really truly I love her to death. I do. I absolutely love her to the moon and back. And we had this beautiful baby boy who was amazing, right? He's like, and I just didn't want I just had a different idea what that looked like. I wanted to be able to teach him how to skate and be there with him for all the firsts and all the things that he was going to do, right? Typical Canadian boy. I'll give him a hockey stick and see if he wants to play hockey or whatever, right? But he doesn't. But that's okay. It didn't work out that way. That's okay with me. I'm fine with that. But like being there for all, I wouldn't have had
For
those
those
opportunities. I wouldn't have
experiences.
had those opportunities, right? And so
Yeah.
and then as I worked on this, then there's some like the book, The Four Agreements, right? You talk about the four agreements, right? Not taking things personally. And well, that comes into the conversation now because it's another book that
Hmm.
showed up as a result of all this stuff. And you read these things and you're like, oh, okay, so I'm not going to take it personally when she has this moment, and I can still show up and take out the
Yeah.
garbage and do the dishes. And right, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it gives you that additional piece to build on something. At least it did for me,
Yeah.
right?
And uh, I just love that. And maybe Don Miguel Ruiz's book could be one we could do an episode on another time. But it's like we start on a journey, right? Isn't it? And Gary, like I'm sure everybody listening knows how much I regard you and the huge affection I feel towards you. But that willingness to make a decision. So, often in my work, I say to clients, we have a vision, and that can be for our
Hmm.
relationships or our career or our health, whatever it is. And we don't know how we're going to get there, right? We just know, and we're willing to decide for that vision. And I so respect you for saying, I'm deciding for this relationship, I'm deciding for my family. I have no freaking idea
Yeah,
what that looks like in terms of how I can do better, but I'm willing and I'm making the decision anyway. And
right.
then, I heard you saying, well, I didn't read books, right? But my wife said you need to read this so that we have a means of communicating
Hmm.
here and a willingness to do that, right? So I think, when we're talking about the month of love, that willingness to kind of say, okay, I'm committed to this relationship and I'm willing to grow and to learn and to be different within it in service of it working, right?
Right.
I think hats off. And
Thank
great
you.
that there are books like Chapman's or
Yeah,
like
it's
like Don
fantastic
Miguel
that they're out
Ruiz
there
to
for
guide
sure.
us. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
we go to workshops, and you're probably very similar when you run your vision workshop. There's the three ideas, the three things that you got to do to transform, right?
Mhm.
The third trans T or the transform is transformational willingness, right? The three T's
Yeah.
to transform, or the last one, the
Transformation
willingness to just
willingness.
want to transform,
Yeah.
the the desire for something different,
Yeah.
and the willingness to let it come to you,
Yeah.
the openness, because once again, it would have been very easy to not.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, right? You said you didn't want that
I didn't
outcome
want that,
either,
but
right?
it would have been
But
easy
yes, it would have been easier, I'm sure, in the short term,
in the
yes, to
short
just
term.
say sod it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like,
yeah.
but ultimately, like, and I think the next thing that is important, we're talking about transformation, we're talking about, and we're talking about the languages of love around your relationships and how to improve your relationships. But that first one is that willingness to want to do better. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter where you're at. Like you don't have to be where I was in a place of absolute destruction to start to do better. Like you could have an amazing relationship. You could have like a beautiful relationship and things are going really, really well. How much better would it be if you hadn't read this? And maybe you can go through this. How much better could it be if you understood it just a little bit deeper?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that willingness to always want to grow,
Yeah.
right? And, when it comes to a relationship and if you're committed to that person, if you're committed to that relationship, that idea that you don't want to stagnate, right? There's lots of times you'll hear that comment or that I'm not sure what the word is, the longing for, well, we feel like we've just sort of plateaued and it seems
Yeah,
very
kind of on autopilot a
kind of
bit.
routine, and so the idea that we're always growing, and if we're plateauing in our relationship, but we're growing in everywhere else, what are we sacrificing, right? So we have to grow there too, and to keep it
Yeah.
fresh and keep it, and it may be something little, maybe it's just something small, right? But ultimately, that idea of, well, we need to just be more mindful of that, and around the month of February, of course, with Valentine's Day just being done a few weeks ago, and all the stuff that happens in February, we're on that piece of it. It's forefront of our minds,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to try to do it forefront of our minds for the entire 12 months, not just for the 1 month in the year,
Yeah,
essentially, right?
sure.
Right. And
Sure.
so yeah, it's just about growth there. It's about growth and transformation, and really when you go through the book, like every one of the love languages, they have a chapter on each one. Like each chapter,
Mm-hmm.
there's a chapter on each one, and it really does explain kind of, it's got some stories in there. It's got some, you know, explanation around each one a little more deeper about how it kind of shows up and how you could, be that way. And then at the very end, there's one about kids, right? There's got some kids in here. And but it gives you the survey at the end. It gives you the questions you can answer. And that survey or whatever gives you the essentially the languages that you're more
Your preference, kind of.
preferences around, right? And
Yeah.
and and like the quiz is not really, it's not super hard. And there's one for husbands and there's one for wives. So um and it's just about answering questions. And it's kind of like, it's almost like one of those psychological questions. If you're going to a psychological questionnaire where they ask you the same question in 14 different ways,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like that in a way, because
Sure.
it's about the common theme of your answers, not so much the answers themselves, right? It's the theme of
Sure.
the answers, right? And so that gives you the ability to sort of like expand your awareness around that. And that's what this does, is it's an awareness thing. It's an awareness around
Yeah.
how you show up for the other person.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm just grateful for that opportunity to do that.
Sure. Sure.
Right.
And if you're listening today, like I'm pretty certain because I was Googling this in the research for today's um show, and that like you can do those little questionnaires online and things, so
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty easy to get a sense of what themes are showing up for me. And I mean, again, I'm sure Chapman says this in the book, but I mean, we're not defined by any of this,
No.
right? It's just like this is what's showing up at the moment in terms of how I express and what I like to receive, and in terms of how I experience love in
Mm-hmm.
my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm correct, Gary. Like you're saying, he speaks to it for kids as well. And there, like, is it true, like in terms of these the love languages, that like you could use this as an awareness to hold, like if for me with my girlfriends, I could have a sense of,
100%.
one of them likes to receive gifts, the other
Yeah,
prefers quality time
for
or
sure.
words of affirmation. So
Yeah.
like it can help us in any relationship,
Right.
really.
Truthfully, yeah. And like he has, I think when I look back, I think he's got books out for like teenagers and for
Okay.
like a specific book around each kind of category as
Okay.
well. So there's
Okay.
multiple books in that he's written in relation to different categories of people, different timelines, different
Relationships.
relationships, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as we come to the end here, one, I appreciate you guys listening to my story today. I appreciate that a lot.
And thank you.
Um, but really what I would love to preface for people is that we're once again life change transformation. We're talking about life as a whole. We have relationships all the time. There's things that we are doing every day with people. We're interacting with people. We're having those conversations. That's whether it's your wife or people you work with. We want to expand awareness because right,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking to
Yeah.
expand awareness. We're looking to give tools to you as listeners to say, hey, how can I expand my awareness in this moment? How do I show up differently? How do I do that? Well, there's some different resources that we're going to give you. And this is one of the resources that worked for me. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody. I'm not blanketing that, but it really did work for me. It caused me to do some things different. It caused me to open up the ability to communicate better and to be receiving of new material to, to then implement into my daily routines, like the four
Yeah.
agreements. And there's a few other things that came as a result. And without the first step, none of this would have happened, right? And
Yeah.
so we've talked about power of decision and we've talked about that. So just decide that if you want to show up for yourself differently, how do you do that? There's ways to do that. This is a resource for people. So just know for yourself that this is transformational work at every level, right? And it
Yeah.
could be just as simple as reading a book and just deciding for something a little bit different.
Yeah, and I love that you remind us of that today because I often say in my workshops and with my clients that like every improvement in our outer experience comes on foot of an expansion of awareness in some way. And often, that can come from a book. It can come from, somebody saying to you that not this way, not
Right.
anymore, read, change, do something different. And like it's just it's an invitation, isn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
I keep coming back to just to be curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that anybody else has exactly the answers for
No.
us or can guide us necessarily, but by opening up to what they're saying, try this, read that, go there, listen to that podcast. And as we open up, and every now and again, something will land, and it's like, oh, like, oh, I get that. Like you said, oh, so all of a sudden it was like, I get that. Give me a list, and I can deliver. And being more present and to be more available to help out
Mm-hmm.
basically. And that, like you said, I mean, as I understand it, it shifted everything between you guys, and now you were on a better footing to keep going and continue to make choices and decisions for
Absolutely.
the relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I love that. That's so good. And like I say, you guys, hopefully you got something out of that. Hopefully, my story resonated a piece with you. Maybe it's opened the idea of like, because we are looking at awareness and transformation and the whole idea, and we're taking it as a whole here. We're looking at it from a bit of a
Yeah.
further view. And we love for you guys to just kind of, be open to new ideas, a new way to think, a new opportunity. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, and as we finish up, before we talk about next week or next podcast, is there anything last words, any last moments, things you want to say?
No, I suppose like I always think like if we can make an improvement in any area in our lives, it's like that rising tide raises all boats, So
Yeah.
as we start, every now and again you kind of think, do I have the time or the energy or the commitment to like really lean in, whether it's my relationship or my health or whatever. But just to know, like Gary, you had a full-on job at the same time, but as you were willing to make an improvement in the relationship, everything improved. It
Yeah.
wasn't just between you and your
No.
wife, but like work got better, and you started
Yes.
to feel better. So again, just sometimes we think, am I putting my energy in the right place, or am I doing the right thing, but like wherever we're creating improvement and up leveling our experience, it's having in no less than, when it's going in the other
Hmm.
direction, it's having a knock-on effect. It's the same like when I'm doing better, when I'm showing up better in my relationships, I'm going to have a positive knock-on in my work, in my
Hmm.
health, in my experience of time and money freedom. So just,
Yeah.
yeah, encouraging anybody who kind of feels like this is going on, and you know, do I really want to give it the time and energy? I would say yes. Like
Yeah.
lean in, lean
Absolutely.
in.
Yeah. For me, my last words just be willing and open to
Yeah.
new things. That's it. and then
Yeah.
decide for something that's important to you, really, truthfully. That is key, and that will expand your awareness, and that I think will create greater results in all of the areas of your life, which I love the rising tide idea. That's amazing. I love that analogy. That's so good. So good.
Yeah. And
Um,
Gary, just to say, the decision came first.
yes.
You made the decision, and then you got the resource to
Yeah.
read that helped you with the decision. So again, for all of us, where we want to make an improvement in our lives, decide first. And then the resources and the
Yeah.
ideas and the
Yeah.
opportunities
Remember, the
will
how is
come
none of
into
your
your
business, right?
awareness.
The how is none of your
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
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 Love
Great
that.
job.
Love that.
Great job.
All right. Well, we're gonna be finished for this episode. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Thanks for listening, tuning in. Please share us and spread us around. We love to have you guys do that. That's a great compliment to us when you share us out to other people. That makes us feel really good. So thank you.
Absolutely.
In the next episode, we're going to be talking about balance and equinox and a bunch of cool things around that whole time of year and how do we achieve that balance overall. And ultimately, you guys, if you have suggestions or comments, please interact with us. We love to do that. If you want to follow us on social media, of course, please do that. We always have the links at the end of the description on the podcast, as well as it's at Maeve Langford and at Gary and Benoit. That's where everything's at. And yeah, I mean, we're expanding and growing. And like I say, I think Maeve is always working on a new workshop or a new offer, a new idea for her clients and her people, and which is so cool.
Absolutely.
And myself, like I say, my speaking calendar is open and available. So we have some dates available still. So ultimately, I would love to help you guys out there if that's possible. And
Absolutely. And
that's what I've
I'm
got.
just going to hold this up, Gary. This is the famous card deck, right?
Oh,
So I don't know if you can really see it, but it radical well-being
okay.
and 60 card activation deck. So that was the sneak announcement and
Oh,
the sneak
nice.
preview. By the time
Amazing.
people are able to hear this episode, I'm hoping that it will be available. The card deck will be available to support you in stepping into your radical well-being in 2025.
That's
So
fantastic.
exciting times.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and we will see you in a couple weeks.